The heroes will always be remembered, the best and the worst, and a few who were a bit of both, like him. Who? 10 black pellets on a scarlet field? I do not know these arms. They belonged to Criston Cole, who served the first Viserys and the second Aegon. They called him Kingmaker. Loras Tyrell and Jaime Lannister on Criston Cole. A Feast for Crows, Chapter 16. Jaime 2. Ser Criston Cole, the Kingmaker, has a deep and complex legacy thanks to his role in the Dance of the Dragons, remembered into the era of the main book series over 150 years later for his deeds, and seen by many as one of the greatest warriors of his generation, and one of the most legendary members of the Kingsguard. Many fans, both show-only and book readers, tend to have a very muddy view of Ser Criston Cole as a character, something I think's been exacerbated by House of the Dragon's inconsistent portrayal of him. Mostly, that House of the Dragon has stripped away several of the core elements of his legacy, most of all the very thing that gave him his name, the Kingmaker. Like any adaptation, but even more so with a show like House of the Dragon adapting an historical tome like Fire and Blood, needed to do a lot to expand the characters to make them actually function in a long-form story. It's not that Fire and Blood lacks character. We get a general idea of what a person is like, but it doesn't come close to giving us the kind of details the main A Song of Ice and Fire books do. Fire and Blood gives us the bones of the character. For good and bad, House of the Dragon added the meat to them. But the huge issue in the case of Criston Cole is while they did flesh him out, it was at the expense of his legacy, the very thing he's remembered for over 150 years later. And well, for some, thanks to inconsistent creative choices, Criston Cole became a character fans loathed and joked about. I do get what the writers were going for with the idea of a common man being used as a tool by the nobility, whether they were black or green. I fear that this message for the wider audience gets lost thanks to some of the creative choices and importantly lack of his clear legacy or agency in the show. In this video we're going to be taking a deep dive into the legacy of Ser Criston Cole and why House of the Dragon's lack of one really damages his character arc. I think you can break the legacy of Criston into 3 key areas: his renown as a warrior, his relationship with Rhaenyra, and him being the Kingmaker. House of the Dragon has tackled each of these in very different ways, some with more prominence than others. This drastically impacts how viewers feel about Criston Cole. The issue we have is that people forget there's a separation between the show and the book. They are 2 separate entities, each with their own canon. The book canon is this historical account from conflicting sources. Yes, there are these key events and people that are set in stone, but in terms of a lot of the finer details, it's up to each reader to make up their minds. House of the Dragon, while by the definition of the word is an adaptation of Fire and Blood, this is very much showrunner Ryan Condal's interpretation of Fire and Blood. Like I said, each reader has their own view of what happened. The show is Condal's. Now, the issue we have is the same we had with Game of Thrones, where fans, even some book readers, project the characters in the show onto the book characters. In Game of Thrones this happened a lot with Jon Snow, Catelyn Stark, Tyrion, and I think maybe to some extent in later books Daenerys. It's certainly the case that this has happened as well with Criston Cole, hence why his legacy in the book canon is being forgotten. Criston the Kingmaker had set brother against sister and divided the Kingsguard against itself, bringing on a terrible war the singers named The Dance of the Dragons, the thoughts of Sir Aris Oakhart on Criston Cole, A Feast for Crows Chapter 13, The Soiled Knight. Criston Cole's relationship with Rhaenyra and how this affects his motivations in the book, of the 3 areas of his legacy we've identified, is the hardest to nail down given the conflicting accounts we have. The year 113 AC saw King Viserys coordinating a marriage between his daughter and heir, Princess Rhaenyra, and Ser Criston Cole, a union she famously was hesitant towards. On one hand, Septon Eustace claims that Criston stole into the princess's bedchambers to declare his devotion to her, even proposing they flee to the free cities where he lived the life of a sellsword. But as the story goes, Rhaenyra rejected this, basically telling him a dragon is meant for more than being a mercenary's wife, and questioning his commitments to any future vows if he could discard his Kingsguard vows and white cloak so readily. Then you have Mushroom's account, which flips the script entirely, suggesting it was actually Rhaenyra who tried and failed to seduce Criston in the White Sword Tower. Bear in mind that Cole would have been 31 and Rhaenyra 16 at the time, which by our modern day sensibilities is awful, but in terms of Westeros, it's about the same age gap as Daemon and Rhaenyra. The key point here is Rhaenyra's age and relationship with both of these men was uncomfortable from our point of view, given in Criston's case, he had been her sworn sword since she was 7 years old, which does add a very creepy element to his potential declaration of love. So, depending if you side with Eustace or Mushroom, changes how you view Criston Cole's legacy in regards to Rhaenyra. Regardless, if Criston Cole was rejected or the one rejecting, he turned hardcore into a green after that point, which will define the rest of his life. House the Dragon's take on this is interesting. You also should consider the age gap is far less severe, given Rhaenyra is slightly older in the show, and Cole, while we don't know his exact age, while still older than her, is much younger than his book character. Now, the show merges both Mushroom and Eustace's accounts to some degree. At first you have Rhaenyra seduce Criston successfully, which starts their affair. Then you later have Criston Cole being rejected by her when he proposes running away to the Free Cities, on the eve of her marriage to Laenor Velaryon. The twist here is Criston seems to be fueled by the stain to his honour, something that clearly motivates him for the rest of the show. In the show, he doesn't just become a firm green, he utterly despises Rhaenyra for his stained honour and for her hypocrisy. So I would argue that this relationship with Rhaenyra is a much larger part of his legacy in the show than it actually is in the book, given how core it is to his character in House of the Dragon, where their entire relationship is this grey area in the book. One of my favourite tinfoil fan theories that I am making a video on soon is the idea that if something happened between Criston and Rhaenyra in the book, that there could be a small chance he might be the true father of Jacaerys Velaryon, which would add a funny layer of irony to his story. But yeah, it's a very tinfoil theory. So, while I think the show's legacy will be his relationship with Rhaenyra, and it's not going to be his skill as a warrior and his king-making, because the show has mostly ignored these aspects of Criston Cole, hence why I think his true legacy is lost in the show. When Criston calls himself one of the greatest warriors in the realm during Season 3 Episode 5, many fans laughed at that and called him deluded and arrogant. But objectively, it is true. Just House of the Dragon forgets to really show the audience this in a meaningful way. So in the book, does he deserve this reputation? Well, when he first appears in the history books, he's a well-seasoned knight with lots of real combat experience due to the fact he grew up serving House Dondarrion of Blackhaven in the Dornish marches. Thus, he fought in border skirmishes with Dornish raiders in the Red Mountains frequently. We must recall, as a whole, Westeros had been very peaceful with no true wars outside of the Stepstones for decades. So, very few men have this real warfare, live combat experience. We also can look to his tourney victories. The year 104 AC marked the true beginning of his legend during the Maidenpool tourney held to honour King Viserys I's coronation. Criston famously caught the eye of the entire royal court, especially Rhaenyra, when he used his Morning Star to disarm Prince Daemon Targaryen, shockingly sending Dark Sister flying from his grip. He would go on to unhorse Daemon once again in the lists, along with the Kingsguard twins Ser Eric and Ser Aric Cargill, before finally being defeated by Lord Lyman Mallister. Beating Daemon is no easy feat, being seen as one of the mightiest warriors of his generation, while Criston was basically an unknown quantity. In 111, he unhorsed Sir Gawain Hightower, younger brother and champion to the king's second wife and queen, Alicent Hightower. In 114 AC, he attended the wedding of Rhaenyra to Rhaenyra Targaryen, which included 7 days of feasting and jousting. During a melee, he left Harwin Strong, Rhaenyra's lover, with broken collarbones and a shattered elbow. Criston's Morning Star also cracked the helm of Rhaenyra's favourite, Sir Joffrey Longmouth, with the knight dying 6 days later. But the biggest mark of his skill was the fact he had been appointed to the Kingsguard in 105 AC and later made Lord Commander in 112 AC. Being named to the Kingsguard is a high honour, saved for the best knights of the realm, and only the best of those knights become the Lord Commander, theoretically. There is still elements of politics at play. You may not like Ser Criston Cole as a character, but in the book he earned his reputation as a skilled warrior. In the show, given how little combat and tourneys they've actually shown, I think this aspect of his character gets greatly overlooked, hence why that part of his legacy has been lost. We can begin here, the 4 of us, 1 against the 3 of you. Will that be enough to make a fight of it? Criston Cole, Garibald Grey, Pate of Longleaf, and Roderick Dustin. Fire and blood. The dying of the dragons, Rhaenyra triumphant. The true heart of Criston Cole's legacy is being the Kingmaker. In the show, while he's still a key part of the Green faction, he's not that involved in the politics of the realm and the succession of Aegon, which I think is a huge loss for the character. Yes, he's sent to look for Aegon. He's the man who physically places the crown on his head. Lord Darklyn calls him the Kingmaker. But in the show, Criston doesn't do any of the things that actually make him the Kingmaker in the book. He's the Kingmaker in name only. When King Viserys died in 129 AC, it was Criston Cole and Alicent Hightower who assembled the Small Council to discuss the succession, keeping the king's death a secret from the public. According to Eustace, when Lord Lyman Beesbury objected to crowning Aegon, Criston cut his throat, while Mushroom claims that Criston instead flung Lyman to his death from a window. Neither man was present at the meeting, however. The show takes the view that the Cole's killing of Beesbury was an accident. Criston's role in the Green Council was watered down dramatically, like the Green Council as a whole. When Criston was sent to find Aegon, it was him who convinced Aegon to ascend the Iron Throne. Mushroom wrote that Criston found him with a young girl in Fleabottom, while Eustace claims Aegon was in a more reputable situation with the daughter of a trader. According to the Septon, Criston told Aegon that he and his siblings and children would be killed by Rhaenyra if he did not claim the Iron Throne, and he spent time convincing Aegon to return to the Red Keep and take the throne. Or yes, Criston also physically crowned Aegon. It was his role in finding Aegon and convincing him to take the crown that truly made him the Kingmaker. In the show, Aemond is more the Kingmaker than Criston Cole. I'm writing this script before Season 3, Episode 6, which will include the Butcher's Ball. So, who knows what will happen? Given the lack of Criston being the Kingmaker in the show, I fear we will lose the iconic line by Pate. I'll have no songs about how brave you died, Kingmaker. Tens of thousands dead on your account. With how different Criston is in the show and how I think the Butcher's Ball, while still trying to keep the theme of Criston's honour, is taking a very different approach to it. But it's clear that the legacy of Criston Cole, the Kingmaker, will be very different for television audiences.